And welcome back. It's time for this week's Capitol Report with Pat Wigwiggin of CapitolBeatOK.com. Pat, let's talk education. You reported this week that the Cato Institute gave Oklahoma's public education spending transparency an F-.
Yeah.
Are we alone in getting that sort of a grade?
I'm glad you specified what it was, because remember, this is an assessment from their perspective, which is a libertarian open government perspective, which I respect, but it's from their perspective on what you can find at the state education department portal or sites about spending. Well, in Oklahoma, as you know, we have so many school districts and so much of the reporting is devolved to the communities that might be part of the explanation but what to answer your question, there are 4 states below us: Nevada, Iowa, Alaska, Hawaii. I don't know if that's good news or bad news.
Below an F-?
Yeah, below us in ranking. We had a 38 on a score of 100, and I do encourage people to go to the site and they can decide for themselves. I give a summary of what's in the Cato report and how they're assessing and how they weight things. A statistical term, the weighting that you give different factors. Well, people are welcome to go and weigh that stuff differently. Statisticians or just average citizens can go and look at it and say, well, I think they're doing this or that wrong. But anyway, get back to what they were looking at was the completeness, the timeliness, and accessibility of K through 12 spending data on the state website. In the region, we were the lowest. We were one of the lowest in the country. Texas had an 89.5 score. Wow. New Mexico had a 93 score. It's obviously on a scale of 0 to 100. Kansas, 77. Louisiana, 77. Colorado, 68. Arkansas, 65. Missouri, 49.5. Oklahoma, 38. So it was pretty tough.
You have any thoughts on how the state might be able to counter some of this negative assessment?
Yeah, I think information is information, and I think public entities should provide information. We might want to move to the equivalent of an open checkbook. It's very important to note that there are a few school districts that in the assessment of Sunshine Review, which is an organization that just looks at government data and tries to assess it in terms of transparency and openness. And they give high marks to a few of our local governments and a few of our public school districts. And if that information could get just simply pulled up and then shared across the state through the state website in a way that's user-friendly in this information age, I think that would help the state's ranking. The bottom line is, though, at the end of the day, something we're probably going to talk about here in a minute, student achievement. Improved student achievement over time will trump all of these other kinds of concerns, including transparency. That's not an argument against transparency. Right. It's an observation that their mission is to educate kids. And if we can start doing a better job of that, that'll trump secondary concerns.
Well, speaking of student achievement, School Superintendent Janet Barresi was touting advanced placement progress for students at several schools this week. You were at the press conference she held where she talked about this. So are there really reasons for hope that you see?
Well, I was also at the press conference later in the week where she talked about the bad news, which is kind of dominated, and people have probably noticed, and that is that as she had predicted and as pretty much expected, the more rigorous state testing has led to a decline in the scores in the math and science disciplines, for example, at the 5th and 8th grade level. So having said that, what's working? The state has ticked up slightly in ACT scores, something that was released about a week ago. And then the subject of this other press conference was the National Math and Science Initiative, NMSI.
Right.
You know how government is on acronyms, NMSI. And NMSI is focused on putting resources into targeted schools to get more kids into advanced placement classes. And advanced placement classes, not only can you start earning college credit late in your high school years, but the content is more rigorous and more oriented towards the kinds of things you're going to need in life or need in college. So there's been special interventions at certain schools, and Superintendent Barresi and her people argue, with some evidence to back them up, frankly, compelling evidence, that it's clearly having an impact. So there's 6 where this already exists. They're adding 3 more this next year. and one of them is U.S. Grant here in Oklahoma City, a school that frankly, could use the help. It's not only quality of instruction, but it's the heftiness, if you will, of the content. The business community is focused on this because they need these kinds of graduates in the so-called STEM disciplines, the hard sciences. So macro, big picture, we're getting more rigorous in Oklahoma. Individually, that means some poorer achievement. In the long run, hopefully, I tried to press her on the issue of how long would it take realistically, and what's a reasonable time frame. I've pressed for an answer of 2 or 3 years, and she basically said she wants to see it faster than that because she's impatient. So stay tuned. I think they're working on it. It's just a tough picture.
All right, well, you can read more about these and other topics at capitalbeatok.com. For Pat McGuigan, I'm Alex Cameron. Have a great day.